Hey everybody, I am here to tell you that I like to eat food. And I bet some of you like to eat food too. We are all a part of the world, right? And we are part of an ecosystem. And we're a part of the ecosystem whether we think about it or not, right? So we're going to look at how ecosystems work. In your assignment, the first thing that you are supposed to do is to define ecosystem. Okay, to do that, go to the Google and say ecosystem. Here it tells me that an ecosystem is a biological community of interacting organisms and their physical environment. That's a great definition. So I can put that definition here. So essentially, an ecosystem is the living things that I interact with and everything else, right? So, what is everything else? Rain, rocks, sunshine, clouds, all that stuff, water. Okay. So, the first thing is to define ecosystem. We're going to be using ecosystem a lot today. Now, use the slideshow. Where does all the energy in ecosystems come from? Okay. So, here, the next slide, it says all energy in the ecosystem comes from the sun. Well, that's great. How's energy lost in an ecosystem? In an ecosystem, when energy is transformed, some energy is lost as heat. That's only part of the story. Some energy is also lost in motion. In fact, a lot of the energy is lost in motion. Some of that is also lost as heat, right? If I run really hard for a really long time, I get hotter because I'm using more energy, right? That energy comes from the food that I ate earlier today or sometimes yesterday, right? So energy is lost as heat, but it's also lost as motion, it's action, right? We couldn't do anything if we didn't have the food in our bodies to do it. Same with all organisms, okay? So, we're going to be talking about food chains, which is a single path in an ecosystem. We're going to be talking about food webs. Food webs are many paths in an ecosystem. Next time, we're going to talk about food pyramids, which will answer the question about why do we have so many plants? Why is there so much biomass in plants on the earth, right? Okay, so you're supposed to look at that. There are some definitions. So here's one food chain you could look at. Here's a food web. I want you to take some time to look at that. Here are all those definitions. I'm not going to read through them for you. But the next part of your assignment is what I really want to get at. Okay, what is the difference between a primary consumer and a secondary consumer? You should be able to answer that using the slideshow. But now you're supposed to create a food chain using animals you know. I should say organisms. Label each participant a primary producer with PP, primary consumer with PC, secondary consumer with SC, and tertiary consumer with TC. Also label producer, herbivore, omnivore, and carnivore, P, H, O, and C. So I'm going to create the example. So this row right here is my organisms, okay? And I'm actually going to use the food chain that they have right here. Okay, so here they have a food chain, and the primary producer is a flower. I think it's an aster. Okay, so my organism is an aster, which is a flower. Okay, this is a primary producer, so I'm going to label it a PP, and it is a producer, so I'm going to label it P. Next, we have a grasshopper. Okay, so the next organism is a grasshopper. Okay, a grasshopper is a primary consumer because it eats the flower. It is an herbivore because it is eating plants. Okay, the next organism, I'm going to call that a mouse. Mouse eats the grasshopper. The mouse is therefore a secondary consumer. Okay, and it is a carnivore because it is eating an animal. Okay, and the third is a snake. That is a tertiary consumer, and it is also a carnivore, okay? So you can see how I'm putting my organisms in this row, and I'm labeling them in these two rows. Hopefully this helps you with your assignment. Have a great day, everybody.